Welcome to 'Tis the Soundtrack, the podcast dedicated to digging deep and bringing you the merriest of music all year long. I'm your host, Kevin Williams, and today we're celebrating Thanksgiving here in the States. For me, that means along with a healthy portion of turkey, I'll also be consuming a healthy side of nostalgia. And while I'm fumbling around the kitchen pre-dawn to start our holiday meal, I'll be reminiscing about my holidays past. Being a child and taking in the smells of the turkey cooking, pies baking, and the coffee staying warm on top the potbelly stove, the sounds of relatives catching up over a backdrop of classic Christmas music, watching the Macy's parade with my brothers and being far more excited for the toy commercials than for the floats or performers, all the way up to recent Thanksgivings, where my wife and I have been fortunate enough to have 4 generations of family seated around our own dinner table. And sticking with this theme, I'm excited to introduce our Thanksgiving Day episode and the next in our Merry Mixtapes series, a conversation with Jeff Lofton, host of the Lost Christmas podcast. Jeff brings us a mixtape full of personally nostalgic Christmas favorites, and in this conversation we run the gamut from Christmas classics of childhood to country music superstars to post-hardcore bands in the Warped Tour. If you are new here and want to know more about the Merry Mixtape series, you can check out episode 10 of 'Tis the Soundtrack, where we talk about the origins of Merry Mixtapes and what you can expect to hear in the series. You'll find the track list for Jeff's mixtape in the episode show notes and at our website, tisthesoundtrack.com. You'll also find links in both places to a YouTube playlist containing all the tracks from Jeff's mixtape in the order we discuss them.
Oh, it's one more year of waiting, one more month of all alone, one more day is fading, just bring me back my Winterlove.
And joining me for this episode of Merry Mixtapes is Jeff, the host of the Lost Christmas podcast. Thank you for joining me this evening, Jeff.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you. And on the off chance someone is listening to this episode that isn't already familiar with Lost Christmas, can you share a little bit about your podcast?
Sure. So I deal with Christmas's histories, mysteries, traditions from around the world, kind of all the stuff. If you ever wondered, where did this tradition come from? I tend to cover that stuff. Also, I like Christmas monsters and Christmas movies like everybody else. So I dig into all kinds of fun folklore and history from around the world.
That's awesome. And I found Lost Christmas at the beginning of your season last year, and I can attest that every episode I definitely learned something new, and not just about Christmas. I was going to look it up before we started today, but I'm almost positive one of your final episodes last season, you were talking about meteorological forecasts and how they aren't accurate after about 72 hours out, and it's all based on historic data. I never knew any of that, but found that just as fascinating as everything else you were talking about.
Most definitely, yeah. So I'm a mathematician, and so anything math related I tend to look at, and yeah. So I go off on tangents on the podcast all the time too. So if you're into that, then please join me.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, so for the Merry Mixtape series, we just had a couple basic rules to follow. First, guests would choose a theme for their mixtape, and then they'd select their songs. There wasn't a song limit per se, but we were trying to keep the total runtime at or below 74 minutes, since that represented the initial limits on a CDR when they first became available. Mm-hmm. So that rule went right out the window with the first 2 episodes, but Jeff, you stuck to it. I don't know if it was by chance or on purpose, but so I compiled your list onto a YouTube playlist a few days ago so I could listen to it. Do you know where you ended up landing?
I don't know. I would say right around probably 70 minutes, maybe.
Just over 73 and a half. So I think you squeezed just about every ounce out of there that you had.
This is like flashing back to early high school when you got to get the most out of a CDR that you can. So I'm here for it. That's great.
Oh, I've got a lot of less than legally obtained CDs from the late 90s, early 2000s, where CDs at the time had progressed to where they could hold about 80 minutes, but your CDRs would still come in at 74, and that was always the toughest choice of which song to drop off when you were making a copy for someone else or for yourself.
That's right. Yeah.
So before we dive into the tracks on your mixtape, I do have a few questions I'm asking everyone to start off with.
Sure.
And this will be a nice jump in from where we were just at there. So do you remember the first mixtape you ever made, either for yourself or for someone else?
Oh, yeah, I do. It was I think fourth or fifth grade, and so I'm from like a relatively rural area in Texas. So it was a country mixtape, and it was had my cassette recorder and an empty cassette, and I would listen to a song on the radio, and I spent, I don't know, hours, like pause and then record and then stop it. And then record and stop it. And so the way to record a mixtape was how I did my first mixtape. Yep. Love it.
No, that's awesome. I was chatting with Jerry on the last episode and was sharing a similar story from one of my first tapes of sitting there with my parents' component stereo system and just waiting for the song I wanted to come on and trying to hit that record button fast enough.
And hoping you stop it in time too.
And hoping you stop it in time, yep. And the DJ doesn't talk too much over the top of it, so you get the whole thing recorded.
That's right.
That's great. So what was the theme you were going around, or the core concept for your mixtape?
Oh man, it was nostalgia and memory. That was it. So each of these songs like sits somewhere really important, or at least to me, and they have a specific and really cool memory for me at Christmas time. So that's why I picked each of these. So it's thematically not musically the same. I'm sure you noticed this, but it's a wide variety of songs. But yeah, they all have their own place for me.
Oh, that's fantastic. And maybe a little harder because it's such a personal tape, but who would you give this to, or is there a particular type of person that you think would enjoy it?
I would say anyone who, I guess, is kind of in the same age range as me, where they, born in the 80s at some point, maybe even early 90s, and then they had some sort of emo phase, and or post-hardcore phase, depending on how you do your music. But also someone who loves Dolly Parton. So get ready, everybody. That's right. Some post-hardcore and Dolly Parton in the same mixtape for Christmas. You're welcome.
So I'm right about in that same age range. I was born in the early 80s, and we'll get to it when we get towards the end of your tape. I was struggling when I was making my notes for some of the bands, and I think I just went with hardcore or emo because I wasn't sure exactly where to break them into what box without upsetting everyone who's really into the bands. So
you will get people who will tell you very narrowly what that category is if you list it wrong. That's for sure.
That's fantastic. All right, ready to get started?
Let's do it.
All right. So you kick off your mixtape with a classic. It's "Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree" by Brenda Lee.
Rocking around the Christmas tree at the Christmas party hop. Mistletoe hung where you can see every couple tries.
That's right. Yeah. This to me is Christmas decorating day. I don't know if other families have this, but this was, so growing up, it was always usually the Saturday after Thanksgiving is when my family decorated for Christmas. And so my mom and dad would put on some vinyl, and we would listen to "Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree" and some of the other songs that are coming up. But this always is just it's time to decorate for Christmas is what this was. This song just screams that at me. All of it.
Oh, that's awesome. We had a similar thing. I actually mentioned it on my very first episode. It was the Disney's Christmas Favorites album.
Love it.
And that's what got put on every year when it was time to bring out the Rubbermaid tubs full of Hallmark ornaments and the lights and start getting the living room ready for the family.
Yep. Yeah, so great.
So, I mean, everyone's going to be familiar with "Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree" with Brenda Lee, so there's not really anything exciting for me to add here. Except I'll mention that the song does have a bunch of records, both the song and Brenda Lee, and they were all set fairly recently. The song originally came out in 1958, and it always blows me away every time I read this that Brenda Lee was 13 when she recorded it, which is just insane.
So talented. Right.
Yeah, would never guess that from the voice. It wasn't popular when it came out, partly because Brenda Lee was not a very well-known artist at the time, so it did chart. It didn't chart the year it came out, and it wasn't until 2 years later when she had cut some more records, was getting a little more popular, that it finally showed up on whatever the 1960s version of the Billboard Hot 100 was, and peaked at 14.
Yeah.
And even with Home Alone and how prominent it was in that movie, it didn't really push that needle until it started building steam during the 60th anniversary in 2018. And so it went up to number 9 that year at the end of the year charts. And then from 2019 to 22, it reached number 2 installed out. And then finally last year, it took the number 1 spot for a Christmas song for the end of the year. And so that's the longest time between a song being recorded and released and when it finally reaching the number 1 spot. And it's also the oldest artist to reach number 1, because Brenda Lee was 79 last year when it happened. And it's also the longest gap between number 1s because she had another number 1 hit with I Want to Be Wanted in 1960.
Okay.
And then, even though this was recorded first, it became number 1 in 2023. So a 63-year gap between number 1s.
Man, talk about a wild ride, right? Can you imagine? It's so cool, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the end of my trivia there. So for the next one, we're going to actually roll back the clock a few years to 1957, and it's Jingle Bell Rock by Bobby Helms.
Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell rock. Jingle bells swing and jingle bells ring. Snowing and blowing up bushels of fun. Now the jingle hop.
This is the exact same. Like, you want to get in the mood for Christmas? For me, Jingle Bell Rock and Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree, to me, just, I don't know. They scream Christmas. And they also have a vague scent of mothballs and Werther's Originals from, like, my grandparents' house, too. So, like, you know, they say scent is the sense tied most closely to memory. And so, like, when you hear something and it gives you a memory, I don't know, for some reason I smell stuff and taste things. And so that's what these do, is these remind me of my parents and my grandparents.
So I have a similar one with this particular song. So growing up, I grew up just outside of Eugene, Oregon, and we had a oldies radio station, KODZ 99.1 Cool FM, which is now a late 90s and early aughts hip-hop station.
Okay.
Flip formats a couple years ago. But the whole time growing up, it was oldies, and they would go full Christmas, and they would do it like super early in November. So you almost got 2 full months.
Love that.
And at the end of October, they would start with television commercials, which seems like a foreign concept now that a radio station would be advertising itself with television commercials. But they would, and the same commercial ran for at least a decade. And that commercial would start with Bobby Helms, and it would end with Elton John's Step Into Christmas. And it was a 20-second commercial spot. And so Jingle Bell Rock was often the first song of the Christmas season I would hear every year because that television commercial would start playing in mid-October or so,
awesome.
getting ready for the season.
That's so cool, yeah. I love that. There's an oldies radio station, and I'm pretty sure it's the same in my hometown. I don't remember what it is. It was 98.1 is the sports station. Anyway, I'm from a small town. There's not many radio stations there, so maybe like 92.5, I think, is actually the oldies. And it still does the Christmas. I think it's like right around the end of the second week of November, it switches to Christmas.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, there were like pitchforks coming out on Reddit when it switched formats a year or two ago because it was also the station, I think the only one locally that would do the Cinnamon Bear radio drama at Christmas time. And they would go through every episode of it every night, and I think they'd loop through it 3 or 4 times before Christmas rolled around. All right, moving on to number 3, we have Silent Night by Bing Crosby.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright.
Yeah, so Silent Night's a tough one too because one, I like foreign language music, so there's tons of great versions from Steel Neek to, there's like some great Spanish versions as well. My wife is bilingual, and so we listen to a lot of Spanish music around the house, and there's some lovely versions. But to me, Silent Night always goes back to Bing Crosby. For me, that's just like, to me, he is I think it's the 1945 is when it was recorded. I might be wrong, but that's just the ultimate version for me. And I love the song. So it's nostalgia. I don't have a specific memory other than like it being on a Mima and Papa's house, right? So
yeah, another classic one for me. I was struggling to come up with something to say about this one that was, maybe new or exciting or something. And I did stumble upon Bing Crosby originally recorded it in 35, and just a weird roundabout story. A missionary had just returned from mission work in China and went to Bing Crosby's recording company, sound company, and was trying to borrow some equipment because he had all this footage from the mission work they were doing, and he wanted to put together a presentation that he could take around to parishes and show people the work that was being done and raise money and get donations and stuff. And Bing's brother Larry said, hey, why don't you sing a couple songs to go on this thing, to go along with his voiceover? And so they did Come All Ye Faithful and in this version of Silent Night, and then pressed a bunch of them to send with him. So when he was out visiting the different congregations and doing this presentation, he could sell albums and raise more money if folks were interested in it. And so just from that, those copies found their way into DJs' hands at radio stations, and it started getting airplay. And then record stores were getting inquiries from customers for it because they heard it on the radio and wanted to know where to find it. And so Decca actually reached out to Bing Crosby and said, hey, let's re-record this, get a full orchestra, so it's not just you in the sound booth, and let's put it back out. And it came out that same year in time for Christmas.
So cool.
And so I'm sure that's been covered many times by other people, but I hadn't heard it, so figured I'd share it.
I've never heard that before either, but that's super. Yeah, it's a super cool story.
Yeah. And then, like you said, we switch gears a little bit here, and number 4 is Christmas Cookies by George Strait.
I sure do like those Christmas cookies, sugar. I sure do like those Christmas cookies, babe. The ones that look like Santa Claus, Christmas trees and bells and stars. I sure do like those Christmas cookies, babe.
Yep. So again, my Texas roots coming out here. If you haven't heard this, I recommend it. It is a very I don't even know how to describe it, but it just reminds me of Christmas cookie decorating day. So my family, my wife and kids and I, we do a Christmas cookie decorating day, and then we take cookies to all of our neighbors. Like we have a Christmas card, and we invite them to church with us and do all kinds of fun stuff just in the neighborhood. Christmas is all about community to me, so I just think it just gives me like great feelings. And I remember my childhood, my mom in the kitchen, sometimes burning, but usually just cooking Christmas cookies. And it's a fun song. If you've never heard it, please check it out. It's a fun one.
So right there with you, I really enjoyed the song. I may have heard it before, but I definitely didn't commit it to memory. So, and it's kind of a cute story in the song too. Mm-hmm. So it's George Strait singing about just eating Christmas cookies. Yeah. And I think one whole verse he's talking about the sprinkles that go on top. And then you go through the entire song and you get to the end. And so at least I was assuming he just likes Christmas cookies. And you get to the end and he says the reason he eats all these cookies is that there's that 15 minutes once his wife makes them and puts them in the oven that they get to go spend that time hugging and kissing.
That's right.
And that's why he keeps eating them. So she'll keep baking them and keep putting them in the oven. And I just thought that was cute and Christmassy.
Yeah, be careful though. It'll turn into an earworm if you're not careful. You'll find yourself like humming it all year long.
Let's see. Only other note I had there too was it was interesting. The song came out in 1999 for a country Christmas compilation. It's that which is an album itself that has come out many times every year, and they've got a whole different set of stuff. Yep. So it was a little interesting to me that George Strait also put out his own Christmas album in '99, Merry Christmas Wherever You Are, but didn't have this song on it, which seems like a missed opportunity, and it only came out through that compilation instead.
Yeah, I don't know if you, so being around the same kind of like general age bracket we are, if you ever went to like the mall and picked up those random mixtapes of like, I think that's where I first heard this song, was I like picked up a random CD, like a country Christmas CD, like at Hastings or something like that, and took it home, and so love it. Yep. Just love it.
Same thing. We had I think ours was called Camelot Music or something like that. That was the big one in our mall before Sam Goody and all the other ones came in. And same deal when CDs were still new and cool. They would have the random Camelot samplers or pop samplers or whatever on there. And I remember they for whatever reason they shoved a CNC Music Factory song on like every single one of them.
Of course, right? Yeah. They must have had a deal with them, right? It's like there's some sort of contract they're not exposing, but it's fine.
On to number 5, we have Mary Did You Know by Kenny Rogers and Wynonna Judd.
Mary, did you know that your baby boy will give sight to a blind man?
Mary, did you know that your baby boy would calm a storm?
So this one is kind of funny because it's related to the next one that I'll get to in a minute. But this just reminds me of my wife. She grew up with Dolly Parton on the like at Christmas time, and it was mostly at my mom's house that we would listen to Dolly Parton. And for those that don't know, Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers have an excellent album, a Christmas album together. And so, but this one, Mary Did You Know, is an amazing song to me. I love it. And, you know, I talked to several people when I was putting together my list, and they said, oh, you know, you pick a different version, do the pentatonics or do somebody. And I'm like, you know, as great as other versions are, this one is just the nostalgia. And since that's the theme of like memory and nostalgia, I wanted to go with the one that's like, maybe it's not the best version of the song, but it's the like one that is most closely tied to my memory. So here we are. Kenny Rogers.
Oh, that's cool. And we'll talk about it in a minute when we go to the next one. But what kind of struck me on this one, because don't know that I'm very familiar with the song, but this one's powerful. I mean, both their vocal performances on it are like they were giving it all there. Yeah, which is just very cool to hear.
Yeah, and it's an odd pairing, at least to me. It was like it wasn't one that I would have expected, but it was. Yeah, it's a really good song.
And then that's a good segue into number 6, With Bells On by Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers.
I'll be home with bells on. I'll be home with bells on. Trim the tree and wrap the presents. Turn the Christmas music on. This Christmas I'll be home with bells on.
Yeah, so for those that aren't aware, With Bells On was it's an old saying, like I'm coming and we're gonna make merry. And it had to do with like if they had to pull you out of the mud and muck when you brought a sleigh or a sled or a wagon, and it was like an exchange, like that you'd have to give them the sleigh bells because they were typically unique as like an exchange of goods. That's the story that I've heard. I don't know if that's actually accurate or not, but that's where I heard the With Bells On, like I'll be home with bells on, I'll be there with bells on. That's where it comes from. But yeah, this is Dolly Parton, and this and Hard Candy Christmas are regulars in my household at Christmas time. And my wife and I will belt them out. We will sing these loud and proud. And yeah, I love me some Dolly Parton. I did not for the longest time, but now I do. So
that's awesome. Like you mentioned, it's from the album Kenny and Dolly Once Upon a Christmas that came out in the early 80s. The album has a couple of solos from each of them, but primarily duets of them singing songs. And then you mentioned Hard Candy Christmas. It got a re-release in the late 90s, and for whatever reason, they took off the 2 Kenny solo songs, but they added on Dolly's version that was current at the time of Hard Candy Christmas. All right. These next 2 are actually a pair of my personal favorite Christmas songs. The first one up is Last Christmas by Wham.
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the very next day, you gave it away. This year, to save me from tears, I'll give it to someone special.
That's right. Yes. First of a couple for me on this. So to me, this is one of those when you hear it on the radio, you're like, oh, it's Christmas. Like, you know it. And the relatively recent movie aside, this song just really, if you ever had a significant other around Christmas time that was a challenging situation, then you understand this song so much. So yeah, you know, teenage years, this was really powerful, and it's just a fun song. It's hard to not enjoy it, and it's an 80s song, and I just love 80s music. I can't help it.
Yeah, and I mean it's just a huge song. You know, it came out in 1984, and this was a George Michael brainchild. I think he did it all in one day in the studio. He played every instrument. He came up with the lyrics. He wrote the melody and everything for it, and just laid down everything, edited and mixed it himself. And it ended up being the number 2 that year because that was also the year Band-Aid came out with "Do They Know It's Christmas."
Personal opinion there. Yeah.
So something interesting that I didn't know was that the whole Band-Aid thing and everything, and they were raising money for the famines that were going on in Ethiopia at the time. So when Last Christmas came out, Wham did the same thing, and all the proceeds from the single that had Last Christmas on it went to famine relief funds in Ethiopia also.
Awesome. Yeah, super. I didn't know that either, but that's great.
And then also very similar to the trajectory of Brenda Lee and Bobby Helms, Last Christmas finally hit the #1 spot on New Year's Day 2021. So I didn't quite do the finger math there, but what about 40 years, 37 years later?
Interesting. I wonder if it was, have you seen the movie, the relatively recent Last Christmas? Or
Yeah, that was
that 21?
It might have been 3 years ago.
I don't remember. It was. I mean, I wouldn't say it's forgettable because I remember it, but anyway.
And then other tidbit. Starting the 20th century or the 21st century, geez, it's this is the third one of these I've recorded, and every time we start talking about songs, we're like, a few years ago, and then you realize that was 25 years ago. Yeah. So at the start of the 21st century, we'll get it right this time. Last Christmas was the UK's most played song up until 2011, and then it was overtaken by the next song on your list, Fairytale of New York by the Pogues.
The boys of the NYPD choir were singing Go and Play, and the bells were ringing out for Christmas Day.
So, caveat, my wife despises this song, but I absolutely love it. This is a Christmas karaoke favorite of mine. And I'll sing it solo. I know it's not a solo, but I just love it. This one, it really, I think much like Last Christmas, this one kind of like gives you some memories of heartbreak and like complicated relationships at Christmas time. I feel like holidays are always complicated anyway, and when you have a complicated relationship, then it just anyway. And this one just takes you back there, and they get to let it out, even if you don't always get to let it out. So I like it.
Same kind of emotions, compromise and things turning out differently than how you wish they would, and it's just very melancholy throughout the whole thing. Also a favorite. Usually it's cooking breakfast when on the weekends when I'm up before anyone else wakes up and they don't have to listen to me in the kitchen doing it.
Yeah. See. Yeah, I get this song is not for everybody, but I'm glad we're kindred spirits here because it's an excellent Christmas song.
So trying to draw parallels and tie everything together here. This song was also the #2 song the year it was released, and it was beat out by not a Christmas song, the Pet Shop Boys version of "Always on My Mind." And I only bring that up because "Always on My Mind" was originally recorded by Brenda Lee in 1972.
Oh, hey.
Not written by her, but it was written in 72 or slightly before that. She was the first one to record it, and then Gwen McCrae and Elvis Presley also recorded it that same year, but she was the first one to do it. All right, moving along to #9, we have "Let It Snow" by Boyz II Men.
It's a joyous thing, let the angels sing, 'cause we're together. We gotta sing, hey, can't let it slip away. No outside it's rain and sleet when our bodies meet. I don't care.
Yeah, so big Boyz II Men fan growing up. I've always loved R&B music, and Boyz II Men was in the 90s as a young man. If you listened to Boyz II Men, you felt like they just got you, right? It wasn't a boy band, so it was like more mature than a boy band, and anyway, I find this rendition to be just absolutely like, they're just so talented, and it just screams Christmas. I never got to experience snow growing up, right? I mean, I grew up in kind of like a desert area of West Texas, and we didn't get snow. We just got cold and wind, but no snow. So I always envisioned what it would feel like if it snowed.
So we were trying to do the math. It's been a while ago now. Out here in Oregon on the West Coast, it's just wet. We get rain on Christmas. And so we're trying to figure out if we actually ever had a white Christmas, because we'll get snow, but it's usually not until like February. It's never late in the year. Yeah, I'm not sure that I've ever experienced a white Christmas either. All right. Moving on to number 10, we have, I'm going to butcher that, Mis Deseos.
Mis Deseos, yeah. Yeah, you're fine. Uh-huh.
Feliz Navidad by Michael Buble and Thalia.
Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Prospero año y felicidad.
Yeah, so I mentioned it earlier, but my wife is bilingual, and she's a bilingual therapist for children here in Texas, and so we listen to a lot of Spanish music. And I just absolutely love Michael Bublé's Christmas album and his re-release. It's very, very good. And this duet, I think, is just a beautiful blending of songs and styles. And I think Thalia does a great job in the Spanish side. And so, this one is just modern Christmas in my current home with my wife and kids is what this one speaks to. So I just love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you mentioned, this one's from the 2012 album Christmas, which just another huge album. I looked it up, and it was the second highest selling album, not just Christmas, but second highest selling album period of 2012, behind Adele's 21, which
that's impressive.
Still blew it out of the water
Yeah.
in its second year,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
So it came out the year previous, and I think by the time 2012 ended, it had racked up like 20 million albums or something like that. But Buble pushing 2.5 million in 2012. That's nothing to sneeze at. And like you said, this is one of the ones that we listened to while we were decorating the tree and decorating the house for Christmas. Doing our own version of what our parents did.
Exactly. Yeah. So my kids know this and they love it. So.
Number 11, we've got another version of Last Christmas, this time by Ariana Grande.
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the very next day, you gave it away. This year, to save me from tears, I'll give it to someone.
Yep. So this is shifting into like modern, like what I'm listening to right now at Christmas time, and by right now I mean all the time, because Christmas is all the time for me. But yeah, so I just love her version. I love the tempo changes and the arrangement. I feel like she did a really good job, and the mixing. Don't get me wrong, it's not her; it's the producer of the music and whatnot. But
Sure.
But her voice is phenomenal, I think, and I love this one. My wife loves it too. My daughter will belt this out. She's 7, and I'm looking for it. She's going to do a musical theater of production
awesome.
of something Christmas this year. I don't know, they've already started working, but so I'm hoping we get to hear her belt out some Christmas songs. So yeah, this is just
That's fantastic.
it's just current nostalgia for me.
Yeah, great version of the song. She pulled off a hard task, which was she added some new lyrics to it, so it's not a beat for beat,
Nope.
same as Wham's version, and pulled it off quite well.
Agree. Yeah, and I think it's when the original is so good, I think you either have to, which is challenging, either do it exactly the same or you have to really put your own spin on it but not ruin it. And that's a very fine line, I feel like, to walk in. So I'm glad I'm not an artist, because I couldn't do it for sure.
For number 12, we have Cold December Night by Michael Bublé.
So please just fall in love with me this Christmas. There's nothing else that I will need this Christmas. Won't be wrapped under a tree. I want something to last forever. So kiss me on this cold December night.
Yep. Again, Michael Bublé. To me, he is adulthood Christmas for me is what I like. I feel like my parents listened to, I don't know, it was a little different, but they probably listened to like Sinatra and Brenda and Bing Crosby, and that was the end. Not the same amount of time it has passed, but I feel like, to me, Michael Bublé is Christmas time. It's just, and Mariah Carey, obviously, but that's not on my playlist because that's not nostalgia for me. So this one is again, this is so these 3 songs that we just been talking about are on my Amazon Music playlist. So like when I say, hey, we're gonna decorate the tree, I have a specific playlist for it. These 3 are on it, and they are like and they have done every year since I was putting up a 4-foot tree in a tiny 400 square foot apartment with my wife, and they will be until the day I die. These will be on there.
Oh, that's great. This one, like we mentioned before, from the same 2012 Christmas album, kind of cool. This is the only wholly original song on the album. So he's got, rearrangements and interpretations of some other ones, but this was written by Michael Buble and his longtime writing partner, Alan Chang, that does a lot of the non-Christmas stuff with him. And so very cool.
Yeah, that's one of the other reasons that I like it is I don't, all of his versions of songs are not always the best in my opinion, right? But they're still good. But an original song I think is really good, especially if you like the artist. And if they put something out original that's a Christmas song, I'm gonna give it a listen. This one just stuck with me.
Oh, that's a good segue into number 13. Take Me Home for Christmas by Dan and Shay.
Baby, won't you take me home for Christmas? Show me around your town. Take me where you used to watch the snow come down. All of your traditions, I wanna know more. You check every box off of my list. If you take me home for Christmas.
Yep. So, pretty modern song. I think it came out 2 years ago. I might be mistaken. Maybe last year. But this is I think they consider themselves country artists. That's what I would classify them as. Although, like, country music I grew up with is very different than this. So, very interesting segue. Not interesting to everybody, but possibly to this conversation. Growing up, my cousin was in a pretty popular Texas country band called Little Texas, and they toured nationally.
Oh, cool.
And so I grew. When I say I grew up with country music, I mean I grew up in country music. Is like, and Dan and Shay. It was funny. I just told my smart device to play, like, hey, play new Christmas music one year, and this was the first song that popped up, and I was like, huh, I don't know if I like this. And then I did it the next day, and it played it again, and I was like, oh man. And so now that's what this is like, it may have been last year, it may have just been last year, but it has stuck with me. And man, I once I hear it once, I can't get it out of my head. So
Oh, that's awesome. This one came out, I think, originally in 2020. And the interesting thing is they've had a bunch of Christmas singles all the way back to 2013 and all the way through a couple that they released in 2022. None of them are on any albums anywhere. So I fired up Discogs and was trying to figure out what they were on if folks go looking for stuff and, they're not just going to pull it off from streaming. Nowhere.
Yeah, just singles, I guess, right?
Yeah, just the singles. The closest is 2021's Officially Christmas, and it was on a couple of DMC's compilations. So if you've got a Christmas Monster Jam Volume 11 or DJ Essential Christmas 29 laying around, you'll find it on there, and that's the only place I've seen it show up.
Yep, coming to an office party near you sometime soon.
Hi, this is Kevin from the Slight Future. Well, slight future from when Jeff and I recorded this episode, or slight past from when you're listening to this episode, or distant past if you're listening in the far future, but not quite as distant past as the rest of the conversation. Hope that made sense. In any case, I'm interrupting this episode with some late-breaking news. In the 6 weeks it took me between recording this episode with Jeff and when I released it on Thanksgiving Day, Dan and Shay have released a Christmas album, a double album in fact, titled It's Officially Christmas. The album contains 21 tracks, 10 holiday standards, followed by 11 originals, including all the songs we just referenced. Now I'll turn things back to you, past Kevin and Jeff. So for number 14, we have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas by Jesse and Joy.
Te deseo muy felices fiestas y a tu corazón vida y alegría y mucho más calor.
Yep. So this is another mashup. It's an English-Spanish compilation, kind of mix match, and this again just really hits home. It's home for us. My wife lived in Spain for a while as well, and so So we love Spanish music, and I was gonna fill this with more Spanish music, but that's not really my playlist. That'd be her playlist. So I made some compromises with her, and I love this. I love the pacing of the song. I love I think it's a pretty good balance of like 50-50 Spanish English, and it just is I don't know. It reminds me of sitting on the porch at Christmas time with my family. So we didn't get cold weather until like January usually. December was still usually like 70s, 80s. So it was still outside weather a lot of the time. And this is just now it's a Lofton classic. It's in our house. That's what it is. It's just going to sit with us forever.
Very cool arrangement, and like you said, it's about half English, half Spanish. Very cool string arrangement that happens during it. This was a new one for me. I'd never heard this song before, so it was awesome to get to hear it through your album. And for folks, Jesse and Jay and Joy, brother and sister duo from Mexico that started in the early 2000s. And this track was released in 2020, and as far as I can tell, has not been on any albums yet, so streaming is the way to get it.
Yeah, you can find it pretty much everywhere streaming. But yeah, it'd be nice if it was on even a compilation. I haven't even seen it on a compilation anywhere. So
Nope.
Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place.
And for number 15, we have another pair of siblings. This is O Come, O Come, Emmanuel by For King and Country featuring Need to Breathe.
Oh, come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel.
Yeah, so this is perhaps if not my favorite, then one of my favorite like faith-based Christmas songs. So with Mary Did You Know as well, Silent Night, but O Come, Emmanuel, God With Us, I feel like it just screams Christmas to me, and I love For King and Country. I think their music is very interesting, and they've done a couple of Christmas songs, but this one, especially the way that it just gets so intense and just kind of comes at you, and I don't know, it gives me all the feels, all the emotion. It like runs through this like gamut of like pacing and intensity, and I love it.
Yeah, you mentioned the emotion. Again, this was another new one for me, so I was excited about that. And it's a heavy song, or maybe just dense. I don't know what the best description is there, but was definitely not prepared for that. And it's a very intense version of the song. Like we mentioned, another sibling band. They're actually Australian brothers who relocated to the Nashville area. Their dad was a music promoter and came over for work when they were small, so they grew up in and around Nashville. And this track is off their 2020 holiday album, A Drummer Boy Christmas. It was also cool. It was an introduction for me to Need to Breathe, who I also wasn't familiar with. And again, I hate putting things in boxes, but they're another Christian group. They're a southern rock gospel kind of
probably
band.
The best way to put it. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you'll get some comments about that, but yeah, that's probably the best way to put it. Yeah, relatively new to the scene. I think I say like in the last 5 to 6 years or so. But yeah, definitely check it out, everybody. Check this one out. It's a good one.
And that brings us to 16. We have Winterlove by Parachute.
Oh, I've slept in every city, drove through every countryside, made friends with the shadows, looking for a place.
So I first heard this in 2009 Christmas season, and that is when my wife had just moved to Spain. We were not dating, and I like Facebooked her back when Facebook was actually more useful as a social media platform than it is now for me. And I Facebooked her and was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And she was like, "Oh, I'm like about to move to Spain to be an au pair for this family in Spain." I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." And then I rearranged my whole work schedule. I started going in at 6 a.m. so I could get off at 2 to Skype her, and we would exchange songs that we would listen to, and Parachute, I found this Parachute album, and Winterlove was on it, and that's when we started dating, is when she lived in Spain. And so this song is forever, like, it just reminds me of our love story. So it's the perfect Christmas song for us and our family, and I absolutely love it. So I had to include it.
Oh, that's an awesome story. I actually have a story for this one. Well, not this song, but for Parachute. But I'm gonna preface that and say not nearly as good as your story. So, okay. So I came across the band Parachute after my son was born in January 2012, and I was flipping through the channels looking for something to watch on TV while I'm taking care of the baby, and flipped on Live from Daryl's House, which I'd never seen before. And if you've never seen the show, it's Daryl Hall from Hall & Oates.
Oh, okay.
And it started as a web series, but by the time I found it in 2012, it was on some cable network. But every episode would just be a band coming on, and they would like jam around with him and talk about whatever the topic was. And then the episode would end with them all getting together and playing, originally in his house. And then after it was on TV a couple seasons, he bought a bar or a club in New York and named it Daryl's House, and they would play there. But they would do, but Daryl and his house band would join the guest band for a few of their tracks and sing it with them, and then they would all cover a couple Hall & Oates songs.
So cool.
So I started watching it and got kind of into it, and found out it started as a web series. So then for that year, I'd go back and watch the old ones. And Parachute was, I think, episode 20 when it was still a web series. That's where they came from. So when I saw this one show up on your list, I wasn't horribly familiar with the song Winterlove, but saw Parachute on there. Haven't listened to them in years, but that's exactly what it made me think of. Was that first year my son was born, just kicking around the house, watching Live from Daryl's House with him.
Yeah, see, music is it just brings back those floods of memories, and you instantly are transported back to when you heard that song or heard that band, and that's so such an important song for me. Again, maybe not the greatest song in the world, but I really enjoy it, and it's very important to me.
Oh, that's awesome. We're getting close to the end here, and like you said, now we're getting into more what I was listening to in the early 2000s, and so this next one is Mookie's Last Christmas, the acoustic version by Seosin or Seoshin, depending on how you like to pronounce it.
I can shake it, make the same mistakes once. Flash of red and green all over me, freeze the things that you love. Ash from what is found over and
Yeah, so gonna be a bit more down for this one. So I first heard this song off of a bootleg live album that somebody had recorded terribly at a Seosin live concert, and I first heard it shortly after my sister had passed in the early 2000s, and so it just she passed right before Thanksgiving, and so Thanksgiving's never been a big thing to me since then. It was almost 20 years ago, but so this one has fond memories of. It just reminds me of her, and so I get to listen to it. It's not their best song by any stretch of the imagination, in my opinion, but I really enjoy the acoustic version, which came out years and years later. They did an acoustic live version that is I like it better than the standard track, but. Yeah, so this one's a little bit heavier, as far as why it's on the list, but I absolutely love it, and I still listen to the Seosins every now and again. Whenever I'm hey, I want something kind of not great but fun to listen to.
So I stared at this one for a while. I don't think I had heard this song, but I was looking at it. I'm like, the band. This sounds familiar. Where have I heard them? And then. Realized I saw them back on the Warped Tour in 05, 06. I don't remember the exact year, but there were many years in a row where the Warped Tour came through Portland, a couple hours up the road from us. And so started my friends and roommates would go to it. And then after we got a little older, just my wife and I would go to it for a few years until we had kids, and then it stopped. So I remember seeing them whatever year it was, and someone probably knows this off the top of their head, but it was the year we saw Joan Jett and the Blackhearts was one of their, cool. They had pulled out Billy Idol the year before, and then that year they pulled out Joan Jett to come play with them, and So I think that was the year I saw them live. Um, and so again, I didn't have any history with the song, so did a bit of research on it too. It was a super, super early recording, not this version, but they had a super, super early recording in like 2003, which I think was about the time the band originally formed.
Yeah.
And they did it for a Santa Cause, which was a punk rock Christmas album to raise money for a pediatric AIDS foundation. And so kind of an interesting album, mix of covers and original songs, but this was on there. And then a year or so later, their original vocalist, Anthony Green, left the band, and they did this nationwide search for a replacement vocalist and lead singer. And the guy who got it, Cove Reber, who was like 19 at the time, submitted them a demo tape and named it Mookie's Last Christmas. And he ended up being the one they chose to be the vocalist. And so he was with them for a few years before, I think they've had like a bunch of different changes since
They
then.
have had, yeah. They've wiped the whole cast and crew, I think, at some point.
Yeah. But like you said, this came out just a few years ago, and when they re-released it, they released like 4 different versions and recuts of it, and one was this acoustic version where they went back and got Anthony Green to do the vocals on it again. So it's a soft acoustic version of the original one he did 20 years prior.
Yeah, it's interesting too because you can see how he's matured, so his voice has changed pretty dramatically too. But yeah, it's anyway. It just has all this like fun nostalgia vibes for me, and I saw them too on Warped Tour. I want to say it was 2006. I think it was after. But yeah, that's man. You're bringing back some Warped Tour memories. That's a wild ride. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. So
that's a different episode we can record.
Yeah, it. So we had the Warped Tour that came through every year, and then we had something out here. And I'm sure this existed everywhere, but being from Oregon, it seemed like a big deal out here. But it was called, I think, the Big Stink, and it was another big festival that happened every summer, but just in Portland. And so it's where I got to see like No Doubt and Beck, and then in the later years, Crystal Method and Moby, and just a bunch of it was a hodgepodge of MXPX and Phoenix TX and all of it was Three Doors Down, and I mean it was just a hodgepodge of rock, electronic, and like indie artists that rolled through every year for that thing.
That's super cool. That's so cool though. Like you look back on it now and you're like, oh man, I got to see this like huge variety of music all in one place. That's super cool.
So I don't know if you've done this yet with your kids. So like I said, mine are 8 and 12, and they are just getting interested with the concept of like live music. And so it's funny because we'll be listening to the radio or in the car, song will come on, and I'll poke my son and say, yeah, your mom and I we went and saw that like 20 some years ago, or whatever it was. And and I don't know if it's just the mix of things that have been on recently or what, but I've got to say that a lot. And he's like, well, I'm 12 years old, Dad. Why haven't I got to go do any of this? And so we were looking hard this summer to try to find a concert that they would enjoy and we would enjoy, and we ran out of time with the vacations and everything going on. So that's still the hunt right now. So that's on my to-do list, is find something coming up soon that they'll get a kick out of, and we can all go do as a family.
So cool. Yeah, there's a two-stepping place not far from. I live kind of out in the country now. I'm still in Texas. But yeah, there's a two-stepping place that does live music, and they have like you can bring your kids up until, and I think it's whole family until 7 p.m. and then it's like adults like two-stepping and stuff. Nice. And so yeah, my kids love music. They love live music, but mostly they've been to like band performances and like large marching band performances and orchestra and
that's
stuff
cool.
like that. But yeah, I'd love to take them to see, especially my daughter. She would love just seeing a band perform. She's the artistic one in the family, like my wife. Definitely, I'm not the musician.
Yeah. So both my kids have played piano for years. I think my son started when he was, I'm probably going to get this wrong, 5 or 6, and then my daughter started when she was about the same age. So they've been doing it for quite a while now. Yeah. And then when he got into middle school last year, he didn't want to do piano because I do that at home and I have lessons every week. So he picked up drums, and very smart kid. He waited until I was having an adult beverage or two and getting ready to go mow the lawn. I was like, hey, we should go around the corner. There's a drum store just like a block and a half around the corner from my house. We should just go and check it out and see what's in there.
Look,
and
right?
we'd bought a used drum set by the time we left the store. And so, he's been picking that up. And I still talk to my wife. I'm like, I don't know where they get it. I can't play a single instrument. I love music, but I've never done anything musical in my life. And they just soak it all in.
Love it. Yeah, my musical talents are limited. I was a belter and a bassist in a terrible emo band in high school. That's the gist of it. And then I was in choir. That's pretty much it. So is what it is. But my daughter's like your son. She's been playing piano since she was 5. It's part of her school curriculum, and so she loves music. That's cool. So, yeah. Hopefully she doesn't trick me into getting her. But if so, we'll commiserate together.
Yeah, there you go. Rounding out here, we've got, for number 18, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays by Issues.
It's a wonderful feeling, for the love and the run from the floor to the ceiling. It's that time of year, Christmas time is here, and the whole again in May, rocking around a Christmas tree. Everything's okay. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
Yeah, so we had talked about classifying bands. So Issues is quite an interesting one. And so I'm going to put the caveat here, not supporting anything any of these people have done. Just this one song is catchy. There is some history with this band that is not great with certain members. So, but I would classify Issues as a post-hardcore funk rap pop band. It's probably, if you've listened to they have made quite a variety of music, and I love it. And the fact that my wife loves boy bands and loves NSYNC, and they covered this and then added their own spin to it, and just, man, I jam out to this song. I love it so much. Love it so much.
So this is another one I wasn't familiar with, and maybe only peripherally aware of the band Issues. And so I was in the car sometime the end of last week after I'd put your list together, and this one came on, and I was like, it's a cover of the NSYNC song. And it's tricky because it doesn't start out overtly different. It's maybe got the metal drum beat going to it, but it comes through pretty straight to start out with, and then about the 30-second mark, you get the guitars coming in, and then by about a minute into it, they're screaming the lyrics over it, and it's fun. It's
yeah. They have the very typical. If you're familiar with post-hardcore, like the Midwest hardcore movement, they have the very hard breakdown where it like instantly goes from like NSYNC to this is not NSYNC anymore. Like the main vocalist, not the belter, not the screamer, but the main vocalist I find has like an excellent range of like his range is phenomenal. But yeah, I just enjoy it. It's a fun song. It's nothing deep to it. They mix in some of their own lyrics too. They have some R&B shine to it as well, which I appreciated.
Yeah, so you were talking about categories. I just put don't know. It's kind of like Glassjaw, Poison the Well, and that was my my comment on there. Put it in that kind of group over there.
That's right. That sounds good. Sounds good to me.
This one came out in 2013, and it was on the Punk Goes Christmas album that year, which, for those not familiar with it, there's the whole Punk Goes series, which I feel is kind of just a cash grab set of albums that come out, and
100%.
They cover everything. But I will say the Punk Goes Christmas album does have a cool version of Coldplay's Christmas Lights by Yellowcard that I like quite a bit.
It is quite good.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss if I didn't, since we're in October and it's Halloween season, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that Punk Goes 80s has a cover of Oingo Boingo's Dead Man's Party by Thorn for Every Heart, and it's actually a decent cover too, which I found a couple years ago.
Noted. All right. There's so many of those Punk Goes albums that I lost track. I think this is one of those impulse buys, like you're at a bookstore and it's like, oh, hey, here's Punk Goes Christmas.
And it's $4.99, and
exactly, yeah. And then you get to your car and you're like, oh wait, here's a CD in my truck that I hadn't taken out in 2.5 years because I forgot it was in there. Because you play everything on your phone, so you buy an album and you're like, oh wait, what do I do with this physical media? Oh, okay, let's put it in.
Yeah, I had that exact thing happen. It had been years, and my car was making some kind of noise from the CD player in it. And I'm like, what if there's a CD player or what if there's a CD in the player, and hit the eject button and it begrudgingly spits out, because I'm sure it's got, years of dirt and dust and everything that's gone in there. And it, begrudgingly spits out a Silver Sun Pickups album that was, I think, the last physical CD I had bought, when you could still go into a Best Buy or a Borders and, buy CDs. years and years before that.
Love that. I'm glad I'm not the only one that has that happen. So that's good to know. Good to know.
And that brings us to our final track on your tape, I Won't Be Home for Christmas by Blink-182.
Outside the carolers start to sing. I can't describe the joy they bring, 'cause joy is something they don't bring me. My girlfriend is by my side. From the roof are hanging sickles of ice. Their whining voices get irritating. It's Christmas.
Yep. So Blink-182 was my my two best friends and I in high school. We modeled our terrible punk and emo band after Blink-182, and we wore baggy shorts and Vans and DC shoes, and and this song is their Christmas song to me. I think it came out before we were even in high school. I think it was like 97 that it came out, but this was before everyone had instant access to every song of all time, right? And so for those of you young people that are listening, there was a time when you didn't immediately get to listen to every song that released. You got to listen to what was played on your radio station locally. And if you're like me and there's, one rock station in your town, then, we happened to hear it and we all called each other. Not on our cell phones because we didn't have them. And so we called each other on our landlines and waited for our sister to get off the phone or for someone to get off the internet. And we talked about it. And then I think one of us bought it and the other one... we all wound up with copies, put it that way, of copies of the song. So
it's kind of magic how that used to happen.
Yeah, exactly. This just screams high school Christmas to me. Not the best times, but great memories with friends, and so that's what Blink-182 will always be to me.
Yeah, so this, you were spot on with the date. This, I think, was originally produced, so out here on the West Coast, K-Rock in LA is, the biggest radio station ever. It was the rock, the grunge alternative station all through the 90s. It's where Jimmy Kimmel used to be a DJ for years and years, like way back then. And so I think they were the ones that had Blink-182 do this song for them originally, and it was on the K-Rock rotation. And so I think I heard it probably back in the late 90s when it originally came on, because we'd get all that stuff out here. And then I don't think it actually came out as a single until a few years later when so another thing for the kids now who never had to experience this, there were a thing called CD singles where they would charge you almost the full price of a CD, but for like 2 or 3 songs.
Yep.
And so this came out as a CD single paired with All the Small Things, which was their big song off their current album at the time. And interestingly, it was also on that same A Santa Cause album with the Say Ocean track back in 2003.
Very cool. Yeah. Yeah, the mixtapes and the singles, it's a whole scenario that just we don't have to deal with anymore, but I love it.
Yeah, except I don't know if you're getting this now. I'm getting to the point where they've removed enough stuff from streaming. I'm not finding things.
Same. Yes, most definitely. Stuff I had favorited is it's grayed out now. And so it's like, you have it saved and it's like, what are you doing? Why am I paying for premium if I can't even listen to these songs?
Yeah, no, we've gone through the hunt for a few songs, and I Tidal's my regular streaming service, but I've also got Amazon Music and the other ones, and I'll loop through 3 or 4 of them, and sure enough, things in my playlists are just not available now, and so I've still got I feel like I have to blow dust off from it every time I take it out, but I've got the big 400 disc binder that lives down in the bottom of one of our cabinets in the living room, and every once in a while I'll be talking about something and want to show it to the kids and can't find it anywhere streaming, just a poorly ripped version on YouTube or something, so I'll go to the binder and, like I said, blow the layer of dust off from it and start unfolding it and look at all the all the fads and interesting choices, at various years in my life I was going through there.
Yeah, it's like, don't look at this page. We're just going to keep skipping past this, right? Yeah. Love
Yeah,
it.
this is the year I was sure I was going to make a career out of being a club DJ, and this is, the next 5 pages are just CDs full of odd, just beat tracks, for
right.
different things. It's
Sorry. Oh, yep. This was my Coltrane 6 months, right? It's like I'm just gonna,
Yeah.
gonna move past. This was my jazz era. It's fine. We're gonna pass this. Oh, I love it.
So we're wrapped up here. So just wanted to thank you again for coming on, and say I had a great time talking with you and digging through nostalgia this evening.
Yeah, this was so fun. Yeah, very, very fun. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. Before we wrap up, did have a couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
First, is there anything you would have included that didn't quite make the cut if you didn't actually follow the rules and stick to the time limit on there?
Ooh, what would I have included? I would have included more old songs, like classics, right? I would go something by Sinatra, probably. Maybe another Bing Crosby, throw it in there. Just because I love the Rat Pack, and there's just something about it. And I don't even mean just Christmassy. And then I might have thrown in something else off of Punk Goes Christmas or that A Santa Claus record, honestly, just because, my heart still has painted nails and bracelets, right? but my office doesn't. So, kudos. I get it.
I had to check under my desk here. I've still got a pair of Vans on right now.
That's right. Yeah. See. Oh, I did earlier today. We went to the State Fair of Texas today, so I was wearing my Vans around. But yeah, so I would say probably that. There's countless songs I could throw on there. There's my playlist is a never-ending playlist. But yeah, I would say probably something Rat Packy, and then something from Punk. Yeah.
Nice. Before we wrap up, you have a new season of the Lost Christmas podcast starting up soon, or possibly by the time I get this edited and put together, it'll be starting up about that time. Is there anything coming up on the new season that you'd like to share or throw a teaser out for?
Sure. Yeah. So I will be traveling around the world again virtually with some more Northern European, Near East, and South American traditions. So be sure and check out kind of what Christmas is going to be like in some places you might never have thought of. And I've got a re-release of, got some re-edits for the Lost Years of Santa Claus for those that listen. Got some, going to be restarting at the beginning with some recommended edits. And yeah, and I'll be kicking off on Christmas Podcast Day, which is November 1st. You'll be able to see the new episode and new website will be released on that day. So feel free to check it out. LostChristmasPodcast.com. Depending on when this gets released, you might be able to find it. Might not have released it yet.
Awesome. That actually leads into the next question, which was folks who want to find out more, what's the best way to find you and find your podcast?
Yep, you can find me on Linktree, Lost Christmas Podcast, or you can just search whatever Spotify, Apple Music, whatever podcast service you use. I'm on there. You can find me. Lost Christmas Podcast. I'd appreciate a listen, and definitely check out all the fantastic podcasts on the Christmas Podcast Network. Definitely keep listening to Tis the Soundtrack, because this is great too. Yeah, so you can find me kind of wherever, and lostchristmaspodcast.com. You can email me, lostchristmaspodcast@gmail.com as well, if you have any questions, or you want to yell at me about my wrong classification of music. That's fine too.
Yeah, that's why I've strategically not given out the email address all episode long.
just start putting mine on there all the time, and no matter what, just always put my email address. That'll work.
For comments, go to Jeff. And
That's right. I'll forward them on.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Jeff, thank you for participating in Merry Mixtapes. This has been a blast.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks so much. Merry Christmas, show.
I want to thank Jeff again for participating in our Merry Mixtape series and for taking time to come on and discuss his playlist. If you would like to listen to Jeff's mixtape, it's available on the Tis the Soundtrack YouTube channel. Links are available in the show notes and at tisthesoundtrack.com. And if you haven't already, please check out the Lost Christmas Podcast and the Lost Years of Santa Claus, which are available at lostchristmaspodcast.com or wherever you find your podcasts. Thank you for listening to Tis the Soundtrack. I hope you enjoyed our Thanksgiving Merry Mixtape episode. This is Kevin Williams saying cheers, happy Thanksgiving.
I